Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of reflection for our troops who keep us free. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Michelle, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante?
Here.
Mrs. Labow?
Here.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here. First on the agenda is a proclamation honoring November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month.
Thank you, Council President. It's from the Office of the Mayor. It's a proclamation, obviously honoring November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas in 2014, an estimated 46,420 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and 39,590 will die from the disease. And whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and is the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and is the only major cancer with a 5-year relative survival rate in the single digits at just 6%. And whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is late stage, and 73% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of their diagnosis, while 94% of patients die within the first 5 years. And whereas approximately 1,220 deaths will occur in New Jersey in 2014, and whereas the incidence of death rate for pancreatic cancer are increasing, and pancreatic cancer is anticipated to move from the fourth to the second leading cause of cancer death in the U.S. by 2020, and whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is the national organization serving the pancreatic cancer community in Mount Olive Township and nationwide through a comprehensive approach that includes public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education related to developing effective treatments and cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the good health and well-being of the residents of Mount Olive Township are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatment. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Robert Greenbaum, Mayor of Mount Olive Township, do hereby proclaim November as Pancreatic Awareness Month in Mount Olive Township.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, discussion matter, tree plantings, tree bank assistance for the middle school fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. As council will recall, back on September 16th, we spoke about this issue. Mr. Weiss, the chair of the planning board, had requested we conduct an analysis and see if, because it's all coming from the same tax base, if we can help out the Board of Education with their improvements at the lighted fields. Subsequent to that time, I'd done some research. The memo you see before you, including the backup, in a nutshell, the current balance of the tree fund is about $177,000. We expend anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000 or $7,000 per year, and that's not expected to change much over the next 5 to 6 years. You know, and that'll be keeping up with our own plantings. In reaching out to the middle school, or not the Board of Education, they estimate their cost at about $65,000, including labor. And in your backup memo, you see the number of shrubs and trees that they're anticipating. So we, you know, in discussing, we feel safe that we can certainly offset that cost for the Board of Education. It all comes out of the same tax dollars, and with the tree bank, it's a benefit in that it's been come from development throughout the township. So it's, again, it affects the same pot that we both draw from, and in return, I've spoken to the mayor on this. They've made the representation that they have certainly retired almost $500,000 of debt.
Yes.
In the mayor's talks, and we've reached out to the Board of Education, and I'm satisfied with the amount of debt that they've retired, and we'd like to see if they're able to do it anymore. So in essence, it's a win for the taxpayers. The trees would be paid for out of the developers fund from the tree bank. Hopefully there would be no new public debt, that would be retired as well, in addition to what they've done already, which is significant. So it's administration's position that we could easily accomplish with this for the taxpayers and the Board of Ed to offset those costs.
Mayor?
After discussing the matter with Mr. Canning, I had a discussion with Brian Schechter from the Board of Education. My concern was that if we were going to comply and reach into our left pocket to help the right pocket, that they were ultimately not going to spend money that they had otherwise set aside on some other project. And I've been assured by Brian Schechter that the Board of Education has recently retired about $500,000 of potential spending that they could have had. So they are working along the lines of what we're doing in terms of saving the taxpayers money. So I'm satisfied that the money spent out of the tree bond bank is well spent by us and benefits the taxpayers in the long run. So the administration supports the use of the tree bank for this
This was
project.
discussed at the planning board, and the planning board was in favor of supplying the trees for the fields. Mr. Roman?
Is this for the middle school or for the high school field?
Middle school.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, I'd like to chime in that when Chairman Weiss was here and he brought this to our attention, I wholeheartedly supported this. I think this is a great opportunity, and it shows the synergies that can be accomplished when the Board of Education and the Town Council and Administration work together collectively to help offset any overburdening of costs to the taxpayers here. So I wholeheartedly agree and support this resolution.
Mrs. Leibel?
I agree. It was really great, really fantastic that Mr. Weiss came and brought this to our attention and the administration acted on it. But I just have a question about tree removal. How is that enforced? Because I noticed last week that over on Sand Shore Road, where the warehouses are, I think it's like number 432, the guy who owns that building turned around a couple weeks ago, got a bulldozer and bulldozed down at least 50 to 100 trees. And my concern is, further down from there when you get to Stevens State Park Road, there's a lot of water issues there with one of the, I know across the street from there, it's a wetlands type area. So if this guy took down all these trees, how does that, first of all, I don't know if he got permission to take them down or what kind of, but if you go up there, you'll see they're just like knocked down all over the place, and it's probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 yards.
It's a zoning issue when it's brought to our attention, so we'll take
Yeah.
a look at it and make a determination as to whether or not he had the approval to take them down, and if he didn't, he'll be receiving the appropriate paperwork from the
Okay,
township.
good, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that
Any
to our
other
attention.
discussion?
If council's in support of that, then I would anticipate a resolution for the next meeting. We'll prep that and have it in everybody's packet.
Next, we have resolutions. Any discussion on the resolutions? Any discussion on the ordinances? Mr. Roman? Mr. Canning? Hold on, Mr. Roman.
For the ordinances, just for council's consideration, I have Nicole Shields here from Flanders Rescue and Corporal Anthony from the Police Department in regards to the traffic ordinance.
First question on the first ordinance regarding the police department. What has changed? What have we added to it? Why is it here?
In response to your question, Councilman Roman, over the past 22 years for the township, every time that we've introduced any type of new legislation which changes the way any of the traffic flows throughout town or any improvements that we've made, we've always just had them in separate ordinances based upon the calendar year. This is a full comprehensive rewrite of all of the traffic ordinances for the town from 1992 through current 2014. So the last 22 years of traffic ordinances have basically been recodified into one specific ordinance, Chapter 245.
All right, I was starting off in order. Particularly my question to start off with is Chapter 48.
I guess that's for you.
Mr.
I
Canning?
got that one. Thank you, Mr. Roman. The chief had previously briefed us on this, and this has to do with the cost when they offer for tests as well as for civilian positions. So what the chief had asked administration and council to consider is 2 positions within the police department. One is a $100 application fee for when they hold their police testing. They certainly are inundated when they have the police officer testing grant, and there's a certain cost that goes into that with the background checks and just the amount of hours that the police department expends. The 2 other positions that are the civilian positions that are covered under this is one is civilian dispatchers. Now again, civilian dispatchers, while they're not police officers, they're not sworn, they certainly have the same full access to very sensitive, criminal history material, Division of Motor Vehicle material. So the police department goes through a very thorough vetting process. Again, it takes hours, it takes time, so that cost is to offset that. That's for the civilian positions. And the last one, the $25 fee, is for, again, it's a sensitive position, the confidential secretary to the chief of police. Any position within police records, again, you're dealing with criminal histories, you're dealing with sensitive information which really shouldn't be out in the public, so they have to be very careful when they open up a position in the department. Again, they get inundated with a lot of people that would really like to be in the police department. We want to make sure that when somebody sets foot in the police department that, they're vetted out criminally. We're not just going to have, somebody in there just for edification's sake, that, we want to get solid employees. So that's to offset the cost. The chief has represented that they are inundated when they have an opening, and this is to offset those costs.
Okay. And
You finished, Mr. Rowland?
well, I was just gonna go on the next ordinance.
Yeah, I was waiting. When you're done, you might bring up the same one on.
Just, I guess, now on the 245. Just, I'm sure it's just a typo, but on the definition, first, second paragraph, I'm pretty sure it's eastern, not easterl.
That was corrected, I think, because I brought that
Okay.
up to Lisa.
Forgive me, so once again, what did we change, what did we do, or we just made
There's
it all up?
nothing new to any of the ordinances. Basically, what I did after, I was very fortunate to go to the traffic engineering school at Rutgers 2 years ago. I learned how to rewrite the entire ordinance for the town. So all we did is basically, like I said, anything that was a traffic ordinance that we had previously passed since 1992 through the current date, we just recodified it and broke it down into an easier format to read and put them into correct sections based upon chapters. There's nothing new that hasn't already been codified.
Thank you.
Mr. Canning?
I'd like to commend Corporal Anthony on this, because you know what, it does make it easy if anybody in the public wants to pull up the ordinance and they want to find out where your one-way streets are, where your no passing zones are. It makes it very ease of use for the public to find out where the traffic regulations, as well as council. We had I know we're in the midst of an analysis right now about the speed limit change that was proposed by Councilman Amianda. So it makes it easy for council and for all of us to be on the same page as to where the police department is and where our traffic regulations are. So I want to commend Corporal Anthony. I know speaking with Jeff and Fred, they were very impressed by his work as well. So thank you. It saved me a lot of hours.
Mr. Perkins, I'll get you next, Ms. Lebo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anthony. This is only by introduction this evening. Is somebody going to go through this thing for all the typos?
I can respond.
I mean, as just an example, under Section E, where we have the construction, maintenance, or utility work,
Okay.
it talks about between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., and then it says the chief or his authorized designee may do it before 8 a.m. or 4 a.m. So obviously 4 a.m. should be p.m. So is somebody going to go through that thing from your department and look to get this corrected before we have it for final reading? Is that something you guys could, that's, yeah, I mean, like I said, we're going to introduce it this evening, that's fine, we get back to it in 2 weeks. You should, have all the typos corrected, make sure that it reads correctly, because I can see, you know the way it is, if it's not exact. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Council President.
Mrs. Lebo?
Just 2 things. When I saw the typos, when I read through it, said to Lisa last year, she was gonna run through also, but Mr. Perkins is right, you should have just somebody read through it. And also I wanted to say it's an excellent job. When I read through the whole thing, I was like, wow, that's really great, because so many times, like if somebody's looking for the code and you go up to the township website, you pull the code down, well, somebody looking for the first time doesn't know to look further down and see where it was amended or changes. So it's good that it's all comprehensive and all together, so thank you very much, great job with that, excellent. Now, I have a question, I'm not sure who could answer this with the coin toss, what's the, for the roadway? What are we doing, what are we looking to do?
I can start out with that, and I'll let Corporal Anthony jump in on the details.
Forgive me, I still have rather questions on 245, if that's okay. Corporal, on Old Wolf Road, have you guys had any discussion on maybe eventually turning that into a one-way coming out, considering all the accidents and near misses that happen at that intersection of 46?
Since my assignment to the Traffic Bureau and the Police Department back in January of 13, we have not had any formal discussions. I am not aware if Sergeant Van Ness prior to me had any discussions with that, but if that's something that we need to look into, that's...
Yeah, I mean, you know, being that I'm in close proximity to that intersection, you know, I would have to assume the accident rate there, if not the highest, probably one of the highest in the near misses. So I would at least like to see if anybody that in the past has looked into it about making it a one-way coming out, and the ramifications thereof.
I believe that, and again, I'll have to go back and look, but I believe when Sergeant Van Ness was still in the Traffic Bureau, we had looked at that. At the point we pulled crash data from that, because anytime we have an intersection with a municipal road and a state highway, we're gonna have to get approval from DOT before we make any type of restrictive changes on that. And I believe at the time, the crash data that we forwarded to state DOT did not warrant them authorizing that change.
Okay, and if you do have that, I would love to see that. Thank you.
Mrs. Lebo?
I remember coming to a meeting with Sergeant Vaness, well, his officer Vaness at the time. I can't remember how many years ago it was, but he did have a team from the DOT came out, and they did actually tour Mount Olive with the certain areas, like down where Domino's is, that little plaza there, because the way they had done the to turn in and turn out, it was impedes traffic there as well, and the Connolly exit, and it was discussed with the Old Wolf Road. So there is a lot of data that he had together. And I just remember sitting here and going at a meeting, and he went through the whole thing, and I thought it was nice that they actually came out physically and inspected the area. But I'm sorry, I don't remember how many years ago. It must have been 6-7 years. Sorry, and didn't mean to
Mayor?
interrupt.
Just off the top of my head, I can envision the traffic issues that would occur as a result of making that one-way out in terms of ingress to the apartment complexes that use that intersection from 46 West.
There was also an issue when I was on the safety committee last year. The ambulances and the fire were concerned with that being a one-way, especially from the, I guess the ambulance right there, EMT over on the Bud Lake, coming up that street if an emergency. If it's a one-way going out, it causes a problem as well.
Yep.
So there are other issues.
In response to actually what the mayor said, last year, I believe we did have a resolution that we presented to council with a redesign of the Wolf Road intersection, because until the state wants to go and invest on the Wolf Road and 46 redesign, I don't know how much we could change structurally for the old Wolf Road and 46 intersection, because we would have to take all of the vehicular traffic that currently uses Old Wolf as an entrance into their properties for the 3 or 4 different apartment complexes we have there. And then we're going to push them all the way up to Wolf Road, so we're going to further put a lot extra stress on the Wolf Road and 46 intersection. So until the state ever gets back to us and concurs with what we suggested to them, we can't really make any modifications to that previous intersection.
Any further discussion on the ordinances?
Just the point thing,
On the number 3?
yeah. Will you?
No.
Yeah, I want to know about the
delete.
coin toss. Sean was gonna answer it.
Do you want me to jump in, or do you want to?
No, I was waiting on
Okay.
on you.
All right, thank you. The coin toss, this came in the middle of summer where we examined our ordinance. We found that we were somewhat lacking in a controlling mechanism, and it was with our sports groups that we're trying to fundraise and get to Florida for the baseball and the other tournaments. In examining this, Corporal Anthony, again, he worked both with Christy, myself, and as well as Jeff and Fred's office. There's JIF rules out there, there's JIF guidance, as far as our insurance fund as to best practices. Our ordinance did not reflect those best practices, so that's where this document before you is coming from, where we're reflecting what our insurance company is recommending, the set amount of hours, the approvals from, Mount Olive has a rather diverse set of roadways. We have a couple state highways in town, we have the county roads, we have the municipal roads, hours of operations, the prohibition of alcohol usage, the limitation of days, the mandatory training of personnel and the mandating that if somebody's going to do a charitable coin to us on our roadways, they have to have the reflective devices. So it's just encoding the safety requirements as put forward by the insurance, but also it's good common sense. So that's the overall gist of where this has come from. And again, I'll leave the details to Corporal Anthony. But in examining the issue, we realized that as a township, we didn't adequately address this in our code.
Mr. Roman?
And will we be alerting the organizations that in the past have utilized these forms of fundraising in order to make sure that they're aware of all the changes?
I haven't as yet. I think it's a good idea. I could certainly send word out through Recreation and the Recreation Committee and Mr. LaCitra. I'll let him know there's an ordinance on the books now, and any future prospective fundraising, they're going to have to abide by this.
Thank you.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Mrs. Lebo?
The first aid and fire departments were notified though, right? Did they?
Yeah, I believe that they're aware, but when I send the blast out, I'll send it to them as well, just to make sure it's covered.
I didn't know if they were, any suggestions from them? Eric's saying yes, so.
Yes.
So they participated in drafting the,
What we did earlier this past year, because like Mr. Canning said, is that we did have several charitable organizations that came forward to us, and it was after we had received notification from the MEL that we needed to make some improvements and some changes. So throughout the summer, although we didn't have the ordinance in place, we attempted to use as much of that information to make sure that they had the appropriate approval from state DOT in order to make the charitable solicitations on state roadways. So in effect, we did everything that we have put forward into the ordinance. We just didn't have the ordinance to back it up.
so now with this, is it proposed that the sporting groups, the kids are going to go out and do these
No.
bucket
Nobody's
toss?
supposed to be 18, adults.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I'm having heart failure right now.
No.
No, and we've always, from the police department, again, since I was assigned to the traffic bureau for the town, which is, again, since 2013, we've never allowed anybody under the age of 18 to solicit on a roadway. We actually even have a setback zone, basically, where we wanted anybody under the age of 18 to be back far enough.
Okay.
Yes, Section L, 180-23, Section L mandates no one under the age of 18.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. So the township, I think I'm reading this right, the permit application, they'll file an application for a permit with the township council, which is on page 2, under 180-23,
Yes, sir.
which is supplied by the police department.
Yes.
What approval or what action is the council supposed to be taking on these applications?
I would attempt to answer that, and I'll ask Jeff if he disagrees with me as township council. I would imagine it'd be very similar to the solicitation process, where the police department goes through the form, makes a recommendation. I know council has had this debate before about the solicitation process of what if we say no, what is the
Ramifications.
downside? And for that one, I would defer to Mr. Pasek respectfully, but I would imagine it would be the same format as your solicitation process. And again, if it's a form that council does agree with and want to change, we could certainly amend it and reintroduce next meeting.
And I have to apologize. I mean, I missed that meeting, I think, when the discussion, and I didn't listen to the minutes. My understanding was that the council was not going to go through having an approval process of formal as we had done in the past, and that probably the most expedient way was the same way that we would do the games of chance licensing permits, which go through the police department and back to the clerk, and then the clerk's office ultimately has a responsibility to say, yes, everything's in line, you get the permit. Otherwise, I mean, is that the way the council is? Okay.
That's what we did last time, right?
All right. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense for someone to have to wait and then have it show up on our agenda after your department has already approved it, our clerk has already administratively said, yes, everything's been complied with, and now they have to wait another 2 weeks for us to be able to get in here and pay and say yes to bless the permit. It doesn't make any sense.
I believe, and again, the township attorney may know, but I believe you have to have a resolution in order to get approval from the state DOT. So we still need to have a mechanism in place to have it come before council as a resolution.
If it's on a state highway, if it's on a state road, and the same with the county road, right?
Correct, yes, for both.
Right, so those
But-
are maybe the only 2 instances, Mark?
Anytime that we've ever allowed people to have a charitable solicitation in the past, typically they use the jug handle from Flanders Bartley Road to 206.
Yep.
And that actually is considered state highway because it's the mechanism that people have in place to go from 206 south, either to make the U-turn to come back north or to cross over to Flanders Bartley. So that actually is considered state highway. It's an extension of the state highway. So they're still, technically, they still have to get the approval through state DOT to solicit there.
And then I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it once they've received the state approval, they come back to us? Is that the way it, once the applicant will need to submit this the applicant will need to submit this application to the New Jersey Department of Transportation after Mount Olive Township approval and the Morris County freeholders, correct? So
Correct.
they would come to us, we would approve a resolution authorizing, it says, yes, the permit is good. If it involves a county and the state, then it goes to the Board of Chosen Freeholders. They approve it, and then that person has to go to the DOT to get that final approval.
correct.
Is that the process that has to take?
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Lebo?
To expedite these coin toss fundraisers, can, like, say, the fire department or the first aid squad, if they pretty much know, like, what weekends out of the year they're gonna do it, can they just do one for the whole year? Do they have to do each and every incident separate?
No, anybody who wants to do it will be allowed to go and pick every date that they want to apply to
Okay.
the state for. Again, the state
Thank
is
you.
much more stringent. They want a 45-day window before the actual, they want to have that permit in hand for 45 days. Obviously, with the municipality and the county level, we have the ability to expedite somebody's request, and we could do it a lot faster than the 45 days, but.
Right, okay, good, because
So
I
the
was
fire
just,
departments, yes, because actually last year, the fire departments gave us a list of dates, and we were able to go and block out those weekends,
oh, good.
and then we submitted that paperwork to the DOT.
And now, not that the DOT has staff that runs around and enforces these things, but is there something where they're supposed to have the paperwork on site in case if they do come by?
Yes, they are
Okay.
required to have the paperwork in hand when they are making the charitable solicitation on site.
Not, I mean, you never know, but, okay, good, thank you. I'm glad that they can do as many dates as, thank you.
Mayor?
I understand the DOT requirements, but to me, this just seems like such overregulation.
It does.
That to have these groups to jump through these hoops to do what they do, just seems such overkill. Having said that, if the DOT requires it, the DOT requires it.
Any further discussion on the ordinance? Any old business? Mayor? Mr.
Mayor.
Perkins? I'm sorry.
No, he lost.
That was
I beat
good.
him.
Hey. And it's a good thing. The state and it requires an actual resolution from the township?
Yes, they do.
Not like a certification from
They
the
require
township
a
clerk?
resolution,
A
yes.
form of, okay.
Correct.
Then that kind of adds that layer in
We
there.
never did that before.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Any old business?
No, new business. Well,
No, there's
Give me a chance to get to new business.
I'm trying to decide the old
Any
and
new business? Mrs. Lebo?
John Ferranti asked me just before the meeting tonight if bear traps are legal. My response, of course, was no, they're not legal. And so he said, well, there's somebody came and put one up on Mount Olive Road. And so so I thought, well, let me just call our animal control officer to find out, I mean, it's on Facebook page, I mean, somebody saw it, I mean, something's going on. And as it turns out, the wildlife and game representative did come out today, and they did put a bear trap on somebody's lawn. So if anybody else gets any questions about it, but Frank said that they did contact him, they did tell him, and I had suggested to him, perhaps we should have some kind of a statement going out, because we don't want everybody all of a sudden setting bear traps. It's not like you can go and buy them, but the question will come up.
Amazon has them.
Amazon has them
They
already.
deliver it with that hover thing, they drop it right.
So I just want to thank Mr. Franti. I mean, it was good he mentioned it. We found that out. So now administration, I don't know if you want to, I don't know if a statement is appropriate, or but whatever, but I'm sure people will question it.
Yeah, I'd probably defer through Frank Nelson's office and his Facebook page.
Yeah,
Animal
he,
Control Officer.
yeah, he said he was going to check the Pershing Estates Facebook page to see what they had written, and, you know, but just in case anybody else gets any questions.
Any other new business? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll close it to the public. Motion adjourned to the public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Whatever.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Michelle, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same. Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Here.
Mrs. Labow?
Here.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nacastro?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here. Mr. Amiandi, would you make a motion approval of minutes of previous meetings?
Sure. I move a motion of approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Any discussion on a correspondence? Not. Next on the agenda is, for second reading, is ordinance 20-2014, an ordinance of the Township Council, Township of Mount Olive, and the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 106, Dogs and Other Animals. Mr. Ferranti?
Yes, I move for adoption and final passage of ordinance 20-2014.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. I hereby declare ordinance number 20-2014 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. Next on the agenda is ordinance number 21-2014. Or first reading. An ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Mount Olive to amend Chapter 245, Vehicles in Traffic of the Township Code. Mrs. Labow?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 21-2014 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on October 28th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Next for first reading is ordinance number 2014, an ordinance to amend Chapter 400 entitled Land Use Ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive to implement a comprehensive set of additions, revisions, modifications, and corrections to Article 2 definitions, Article 3 General Administration, Building Construction Permits, Article 4 Site Plan and Subdivision Review and Plat Details, Article 5 Design Guidelines and Technical Standards, Article 6 Zoning, and Article 7 Zoning District Use and Bulk Regulation pursuant to the recommendations set forth in periodic re-examination of the Master Plan and Development Regulations Report adopted by the Mount Olive Planning Board on June 20th, 2013, in accordance with the recommendations provided by the Township Planning Administrator. Mr. Perkins.
Yes, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 22-2014 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, that a meeting be held on October 28th, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Ordinance 23-2014, first reading, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 48 Police Department, Article 3, Extra Duty Employment, Section 24, Contracting for Police Services. Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 23-2014 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on October 28, 2014 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for public hearing, consideration of second hearing, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of law.
Second.
Who's second? Colleen. Any council discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Ordinance 24-2014, first reading, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to amend Chapter 180, Peddling and Soliciting of the Code of the Township of Mount Olive, to add an Article 3 entitled Solicitation of Contributions on Roadways. Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 24-2014 be introduced by title and passed on the first reading, and that the meeting be held on October 28, 2014 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
It's a race. Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Labow?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Ordinance number 25-2014, first reading, bond ordinance amending sections 3D, 3G, and 6B of bond ordinance numbered 11-2014 of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, finally adopted April 22nd, 2014, in order to increase and decrease certain appropriations and authorizations and to amend the average useful life. Mr. Amianda.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 25-2014 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on October 28, 2014 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Brickstown Road, Bud Lake, in New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebaw?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Okay, we're on to our consent resolutions. We have 7. Any discussion? Do we wish to place any on non-consent? Okay. Mr. Ferrante?
I make a motion to move consent resolutions 1 through 7.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebaw?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Mrs. Lebaw, consent motions.
Consent motions. I move consent motions for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebaw?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Abstain on check number 68911, yes to all the rest.
Mr. Mania?
Yes. Administrative reports.
I just have one item to touch upon tonight. Earlier in the day, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it or not, I sent council a memo outlining the latest updates in Powerline Park and Jordan Fields. We had the electrical engineer, as we I told council we would. We had the plan come back last Thursday. The initial little disconcerting on my part is a little the number that came back is a little higher than I anticipated. So having met with Mr. Lynch and gotten the number back from our electrician today, I contacted Gene Bazinski, our engineer, asked him to basically refine the schematic, and we're gonna go out to bid. Until then, again, I don't want to be in a position as a business administrator of rushing into a project only to find out that we spent far more than we could have. The field, nobody's gonna lose time or fields. Mr. Lynch and the public buildings personnel are gonna make sure that we have other fields suitable for playing. The season, the window out there right now is only about 3 or 4 weeks more, so we're better off taking a cautious approach, going out to bid, seeing the numbers we come back, and having the fields shut down longer rather than a short time and unnecessarily spending money. I'm not saying that number may not be right, maybe it is, I don't know, but I think it'd be more prudent and it would be wiser to just do the full bid. Let's see where we're at and get this fixed before springtime comes. That's my recommendation to the mayor and council. And again, that just came in this afternoon about 3:30. So before the end of the day, I prepped the bid packet. We're going to review it tomorrow. And the anticipation was that we'd be able to disseminate it on Thursday or Friday. Hopefully get something back by the November 12th meeting. That's my
Mr.
recommendation.
Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sean, I'm sure, but I have to ask because I don't get down that way often. The area around there is cordoned off for any residents, so they have to keep away from the fence also, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was down there last week, and last Wednesday, I had actually walked the park. They have yellow line cordoned off the path. It's been I don't know if in the last 2 days if somebody's torn it down, but when I was there, it was cordoned off.
I've had a number of inquiries from residents as to why people
Why it
are
was?
allowed in the park, so I haven't been there either. I can only assume based upon the inquiries that people have taken notice of the prohibition of being in the park.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean.
Yo. That's the only report I have.
That's it?
That was the big item this afternoon.
Any old business? Any new business? Any legal matters?
No report tonight, Council President.
Council reports. Mr. Amianda, Board of Education.
No report.
Mr. Ferrante.
The library had their fall festival this past weekend. It was a pretty big success, and the Bud Lake fall cleanup has been postponed to this coming Saturday because of the rain last week.
Mayor?
I just have to tell you, I checked my messages today, and there was a complaint from a resident about the fall festival. And that she had gone to the library and there was too much commotion and too much noise, and she thought that it was inappropriate of the township to hold the event at the library. She didn't leave a telephone number because I would have called her back and told her that we have nothing to do with the event, that the library is basically an autonomous entity and they make the decisions as to how the library is used. I happened to have attended. It was, although the weather was not particularly conducive to a large turnout, they did a good job. There was a good turnout. They moved it inside, and I thought it was particularly well run.
Mrs. Laybow.
I have nothing, oh, just one report. The TNR has their yard sale this weekend over at the After on Friday and Saturday. So if you have any donations, please drop them off. And if you want to shop, please take an opportunity to stop by and look at all the great things they'll have for sale.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Working through with our business administrator as well as the township attorney on getting the ordinance revised and other venues for how we can make sure and get some timely airing of things like council meetings and other things within the town. So still a work in progress, Mr. Gasko.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
Nothing on open space, nothing much on recreation, other than a personal. Went to my first Jets game, and they lived up to expectations. That's all I have.
Enough said.
Mr. DeCastro.
Board of Health meets tomorrow evening, nothing on legislative.
I could not attend the last planning board meeting. I couldn't vote. I wasn't eligible. But we have a meeting coming up this Thursday. I will be there.
Mr. Mayhew, can I ask you a question? Do you know when the project, the houses that are being built next to the Board of Ed building, do you know when that's going to start, or have they said anything? No? Okay. Somebody had asked me and I didn't know, so.
Right.
Catherine, you would know, maybe? Oh, give her a call.
Mr. Canning.
Thank you, Mr. President. For Councilman Roman, the Open Space Committee, in preparation of the budget, the long-term debt, all those numbers have already been provided to Kathy on the committee. So I don't know if you guys are planning on meeting sooner rather than later or not, but going forward to next year's, budget and pay down and all that. So I sent that about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I thought when Sean chimed in to Councilman Roman, it was going to be to retort the Jets comment, but Mr. Canning, I think, has come to the conclusion that tailgating is the best portion of the Jets games these days.
We never lose in the parking lot.
We have children in the audience.
Pardon? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll close it to the public. Any council comments? Mr. Amianda?
No comment.
Mr. Ferrante?
Nothing tonight.
Mrs. Laybow?
I just want to say happy birthday to Mr. Canning, reaching the half-a-century milestone.
Sent my AARP application in already.
Did you?
I want those travel discounts.
There you go. That's it.
Thank you.
Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quick, this past weekend, we had the Lions from Mount Olive. We did our white cane contributions, and it was a nice, little cold and windy and rainy at Sam's Club. Thank gosh they have the overhang up there. But I'm happy to say that during my shift, I was able to collect $103 from the generous people. So it was good. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Roman?
I have nothing else.
Mr. DeCastro?
No, just that I stopped over at the Historics Committee, had the open house, I think over at the old schoolyard, whatever that was, which was very interesting. If anybody didn't have a chance, obviously, I never knew the whole history of that. But there's some interesting stuff there, and I guess they're going to start working on the church soon as well, which is
Yeah.
looking real nice. Other than that, nothing.
I just have one comment. My heart goes out to the family of the little child that was tragically killed on Sunday in Chester. I'll keep her in my prayers.
Mr. Mania? Mr. Mania? Mr. Mania? To that point, I want to say that with all of the events that we run in our town, I know lots of times, like the vendors, it's gotten slow, and the vendors want to go and get their car and bring it on to the location to pick up, pack their stuff up. And I've heard our department time and time again say, no, you can't bring your car in here right now. We have people on site and you can't, you have to wait. And I just really applaud our staff that we do take that extra precaution and recognize that when you have people around, you do have to make certain rules. And I don't know what happened with the accident. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that I know that we go the extra 9 yards to make sure that we keep our pedestrians as safe as possible and not, allow people coming in to get their stuff. So I think that's,
Mayor?
lesson learned.
I had heard through the grapevine that there may be a Mount Olive connection with the family. We're looking into that, and we'll report back if in fact those rumors are true. I'm going to let you know.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.